is really all over the map. I have never seen the quote unquote gold price at 2,500 pieces of worthless paper for an ounce. You're watching, as of 2 months ago, 13 months in a row of truck tonnage being down. When you have the bulk of the freight here in North-Amexem moving by truck, like 72% of it, a large chunk of it is also moved by rail. However, the backbone is always going to be trucking, and tonnage is down. A lot of the quote-unquote retailers have front-loaded a lot of their supplies because they are afraid of supply chain bottlenecks. We discussed this for the last, 3 or 4 Earth days, give or take? And now we're seeing things holding the way they are in various markets across the planet. You've got about 600 ships that the Russians used to move the oil to beat the sanctions against them. And now those ships, some of them are 30 years in operations or more. Some of them are halfway through that cycle, like 15 years in. They're in intense disrepair. They're mainly uninsured or lowly insured. And a new round of sanctions have come about. So various banks under control of New Delhi and Beijing are not transacting in that oil anymore like they were before. So those ships are sitting around with Russian oil and they can't get unloaded. Some parties are meeting those ships in the middle of the ocean and transferring the oil from the Russian ships to other ships to get around sanctions. That too is starting to get choked off. So I guess parties thought that the quote-unquote oil price would rise as a result of all that Russian oil no longer being available. Wrong answer. Keep telling folks. Oil demand has been dropping. And when you get that many EVs in use and now electric trucks in use, demand is continuously dropping. So as a result of that demand dropping, you can't command scarcity pricing. You can't get a higher rate for a barrel of oil, no matter what they do. Demand is not there for it. And with all these trucks with decreased tonnage, demand will drop even more. So the transportation costs, as a rule, for certain things may drop. The question is, how long does this continue? And what does that actually mean for the gold and silver price, which is the only reason why we care in the first place? I think I'm suspecting that because particular retailers have front-loaded so much of their supplies, they won't need shipments for a while. Consumption is down in many places across the planet. So parties that are manufacturing a lot of things to build supply, they will have supply and no demand for what they're building, what they're producing. And as I always speak to, if parties are going to engage in whimsical item production, commerce, and trade, if it's a whimsical item, parties can survive and not buy it. So if they're not buying your product because they don't need it to survive, this is what's happening. And as I keep telling everyone, we won't really know just how bad the food crisis is going to be until after Moor's reemergence. So we're about 2 months out from knowing, well, 2 months, a few Earth days, from knowing what this is going to look like. When you got a decrease in the yields of crops growing across the planet, there's going to be consequences. When parties are overshipped particular places, there's going to be consequences. And if you have to import 80% of your food inputs like many do, not good. There are going to be consequences. We don't do the whimsical item thing. We are in the food, the agriculture thing. That's not whimsical. That's necessity. So our strategic point of view is we don't do whimsical. We do things tied back to sustainment. And we place all of our risk management around that. We do all of our training around that. Now we cover other grounds. We have to. However, the primary basis is non-whimsical item operations. What we're seeing now is what I said repeatedly. If you're going to have a war in an area where the bulk of the fertilizer is provided, for the planet to consume, and you disrupt that flow, deny access to that flow, there are going to be consequences. North, Central, and South Amexem going to be all right. The Alkebu-lan and the Ab.Zu, resources for days, a severe lack of infrastructure, low information availability. There's a lot of data, no context, no perspective. And the bulk of that data is massive amounts of propaganda. Absolute nonsense. When folks have low access to information, and what they are getting is low information with no context, no perspective, their thinking is skewed. Their process, protocols, and procedures are skewed. And the results regarding what they do collectively is horrible. They gain nothing for the greater good. They gain less for the babies. On this side of the ocean, plenty of information, plenty of context and perspective. Parties are apathetic. Parties, as a rule, they lack insight because they choose to lack vision. This is what happens when parties have the illusion of inclusion in a foreigner system. This is what happens when parties sell themselves short and sell themselves out, and their babies too, to acquire access to trinkets and toys that they can produce and acquire and trade without the colonizing hostiles and their melanated puppets. They're just lazy. Some call that mean. I call it love. It's not me. We are their mirror. They are our mirror. And we're showing them through our efforts. They are way off base. When parties get defensive but cannot defend what they're being defensive about, that's ego. If the math is not math, if the science is not there to support what they're doing, that's ego. And it gets them nowhere fast. The thing is, the sooner they realize that what they are defending is not defensible, if some of them come to that realization and choose to put the ego down, they may very well choose to unlearn that they may actually learn. And there's a massive amount of work that has to be done all across the planet. We have a lot of trash that has to be thrown out, originated from the colonizing hostiles and their melanated puppets. The way they engage in commerce and trade, the way they engage in consumption is not sustainable. It's purposely wasteful and designed to keep access denied to many and expensive for many, while those with superior force or arms, they caught off the bulk of the resources and materials and supplies and equipment, leaving everybody else crumbs. What's coming is going to be that on steroids. And most of our kith and kindred are not even preparing for it. Their language is telling. Their behavior patterns are telling. We have to go on. And now we have some of the first of the third generation of Amexem-Empire nationals about to be on this planet. And for us, they are the point. So the work that we do, the trainings that we do, is for them to sustain what we have prepared for them. So we can sit down and retire, and they can take it and do way better than we ever could.